Thanks, Francis. Our book reviews on Onkgopotse Abram Tiro, who was the first South African freedom fighter the apartheid regime pursued beyond the country's borders to assassinate with a parcel bomb. The book Parcel of Death, a biography of Onkgopotse Abram Tiro, recounts the little-told life story of this freedom fighter. Using extensive and exclusive interviews, the book highlights significant influences and periods in Tiro's life. To talk more about this is author of Parcel of Death, Gaongalelwe Tiro, who is a communications specialist and also nephew of Onkgopotse Abram Tiro. Very good evening to you and a warm welcome.
Good evening, Tsepiso, and thank you for the opportunity.
So perhaps let's first start with the relation. He's your uncle, how?
Yes, he is indeed my uncle. Onkgopotse Tiro and my father are actually first cousins, and they grew up in the same household in Dinokana as Rastia.
And I'm assuming you never got to really know him.
Actually, yes, I never met him. In fact, I was born several days, to be exact, 8 days after he died.
Oh, wow. So that would obviously have a great deal of significance for you to get to know more about this man that people credit as one of the firebrands of apartheid struggle movement, and how he died.
Yeah, no, indeed. I mean, how he died is, one of the big stories are around him, because he died in the most brutal manner that anybody can die. And yes, indeed, from very early age, this is a story that I've always been interested in.
How has it been told to you? Because I know in the book you talk about the town where he died in Botswana, that it was near a quarry, that explosions were not unheard of, but you speak about this particular day.
Yeah, no, indeed. I mean, that's what, the person who delivered the parcel explains, what would have happened. Because what happened on the specific day is that one of the teachers at the school where he was based, and the teacher happened to be his host in Botswana, because after he went to exile, he went to live with this particular teacher, found a parcel in the staff room that was addressed to him, and he gave it to a student to deliver to him. Which, on opening it killed him instantly. But the student, when he narrates the story, he says after delivering the parcel and, walking away from the house, like just some 30, meters, he had a loud bang. But yeah, he dismissed it as, a sound that might be coming from the quarry, because there were bangs, regular.
Yeah. So just looking at Tiro's life and the impact that he's had, do you think it was because of how he was able to influence the student movement, especially at tertiary level, that the apartheid government for the first time decided to go out of its borders in pursuit of him?
Well, naturally, it would have been that, yes, and obviously his influence went beyond tertiary students, because after the famous speech that he delivered during the graduation ceremony at the University of the North, he went on to teach at Morris Isaacs in Soweto, where he spread ideas of black consciousness. Some of the students that he interacted with during that stint at Morris Isaacs would include Tsietsi Mashineni, who subsequently became, a primary leader of the, June 1976 uprising. But yeah, it's open to speculation as to why they would have, decided to pursue him, beyond the borders of the country. But I think the primary reason would also involve the actual work that they were doing once they got into exile. Yeah.
So you speak about the talk, valedictory speech in the Northwest Province, but there's also
Limpopo in the North.
Okay, so you're talking about the Turfloop testimony.
Yes, that's what it was called.
So because there are also accounts of his having gone to Northwest University and given what was seen to be pretty much a catalyst for what then happened, not only his expulsions at universities, but the protest action by many university students who actually stopped studying. Just reflecting back on that, is he credited enough for the role that he played during the apartheid movement?
Well, perhaps not. You know, the specific incident that you're referring to, it's what transpired, you know, in the immediate aftermath of his expulsion from you know, the University of the North, because what then happened is that there was solidarity action across the country, and he participated in the mass mobilization that followed that. In fact, the whole saga was called the Tiro affair, and you know, it was a protracted you know, uprising in several universities across the country, and you know, the story of that is hardly ever narrated, and if you look at that, it's probably, at the time at least, it was, you know, the biggest uprising to afflict the tertiary education sector in the country. You know, it would rival, you know, what happened recently, say, with the Fees Must Fall a movement, and I think it is part of the history that is not being told, which is, you know, part of the reason why I would undertake a project of this nature, because I wanted to narrate the story of a generation of activists that is simply missing from the narrative.
And speaking about that, the generation of activists, during conversations in SASO, I know, as we mentioned, the interviews that you have, people like Seth Cooper, the issue of the categorization or identification of black people, the issue of just within the black conscious movement, whether people are called black or non-black. Just take us through some of those conversations and what their impact has been on the movement.
Yeah, no. I think that was a very important debate to have at that specific time, because you would recall when SASO was formed in 1968 and formalized in 1969. For a period of time, there had been a lull, you know, in the anti-apartheid struggle after the crackdown that followed the Sharpeville massacre, you know, with the ANC and the PAC band and, you know, the leaders of our people incarcerated, and our people were literally beaten into submission, and you know, they decided that as a starting point, you know, psychological liberation of black people was important, and you know, accepting to be called black was actually a key thing. I mean, the newspapers and everybody else called black people non-white, and that was part of the whole process of, you know, psychological oppression of black people.
But you also go into other aspects of his life. You've got pictures here of his graduation, including with his partner, and you also talk about how people related to him when he was living with the Motlanas during the time when he practically didn't have a place to stay.
No, indeed, I touch on to those aspects because, you know, like I say, you know, I wanted him to come out, you know, the softer side of things, Onkgopotse the person, not just Onkgopotse the activist here.
So just give us a sense of what people were saying. I know some of them were saying he was a sweet young man who loves the people, who is respected or respectful as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people, you know, mention when they talk about him that stood out about him was actually his personality, that he was a very respectful person on the quiet side of things, but he gave riveting speeches and sermons, and that would have had to do with, you know, his Christian upbringing and the fact that he himself was actually particularly a Christian, and he honed his leadership skills actually in church, you know, where, you know, he was actually a lay preacher. Yeah. So
for somebody who doesn't or who knows too much about his history, at least they think they do, and somebody who doesn't, what is the one reason why they should buy this book, Parcel of Death?
You know, what I've just mentioned, it's one of the reasons, because it brings him out, you know, fully, you know, the whole Onkgopotse Tiro, you know, the softer side of things and the political side of things. But the reality of the situation is that his story, as you know, you mentioned as you're introducing this discussion, is very little told. There's simply no comprehensive monograph of his life that has been written before. I've discovered that people generally know very little about even, you know, some of the political work that they had done. For instance, the activism within the Seventh-day Adventist Church that he went to, because they took up, the struggles of black people within the church, differential salaries amongst the white and black pastors, and that's the stuff that people hardly know anything about. Yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. The author of Parcel of Death. Go get yourself a copy, Gaongalelwe Tiro.